What's going on, guys? Zane here with Everything Vive. Want to welcome you back for another episode. I'm here with Ronnie. Ronnie, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good. It's another middle of the week for us here, and yeah, man, we got some more VR stuff to talk about.
Yep, lots of snow this week. So that was an exciting. I wasn't expecting it necessarily. Like I knew it was going to be hitting the East Coast because I have a brother in New York, and I just wasn't expecting it to hit here in Chicago as hard as it did. So
yes, for sure. If you guys are anywhere in the East Coast or on the Northeast specifically, you know you're getting pretty battered down there. So stay warm, play lots of VR, stay indoors. Gives you a good reason. And
good excuse.
A good excuse, absolutely. And there are a lot of awesome games and stuff that we're going to get to in the latter half of the episode. We'll do news first. But before we do that, we want to do another Steam Key giveaway. We have another one for Smashbox Arena, and we'll have some exciting news for that coming out again soon. We're partnering with the developers to put together a league of sorts. We did a tournament last month, and so we're trying to see if we can do like an ongoing league, and so we're working with them on that, and we'll have more information soon. But the details for the Steam Key giveaway, it's our usual entry rules, is that all you got to do is find this episode on YouTube. We post these episodes there. This is going to be episode number 61, and so just leave us a comment there. Let us know what you think of the news topics that we covered today, some of the games that we talk about, and if you have any game recommendations. And so with that being said, leave a comment and we will announce a winner next week. So Ronnie, you ready to jump into the news?
Let's do it.
Cool, man. Well, I think we got one main thing that we'd like to talk about this week. I know there's quite a bit happening around the VR world, and that's going to continue to grow. I feel like there's going to be more and more news items every week as VR just starts to hit that mainstream. But I want to focus specifically on the Vive today, and specifically on I guess it was an article on Upload VR, but it looks like it was an interview done with an HTC Exec, Joel Breton. And he was talking about Oculus Exclusives. And so here's the thing, for the general community, when people talk about Oculus Exclusives or just exclusives in general, it becomes a very heated debate. You have people on one side or the other. And I'm not going to say that people are misinformed, but the thing is, we're all just kind of part of the community. When you have people who are in or I guess the movers and shakers or the people who are higher ups at these firms, I feel like I feel like on the whole, we definitely listen more because, they have their finger on the pulse, or what is it? Finger on the pulse, so something like that, where they just have a better idea of what's going on in the industry. And so, what Joel Breton came out saying, he basically said what a lot of HTC fans have said all along, is that these Oculus exclusives have been hampering the developers. And he gave several different reasons for that. I don't want to we can't get into the details, but the one that stuck out to me the most was the idea that it's not building the VR market properly and proportionally, you know what I mean?
No, it's an interesting,
and I've never seen anyone take that angle. But go ahead. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I was going to say the same thing. Like that was something that stood out to me. That was interesting. I hadn't really thought of it that way. Up to this point, we had kind of, whenever we talk about people pouring money into titles, it's always seen as a positive thing. So, most developers don't get that opportunity to really be able to build whatever they want because they have a lot of limitations. One major factor of which is just the fact that there aren't tons of headsets out there. So you kind of have to build your game with the expectation of, what the marketplace is actually able to fund and what they're able to sustain. And so as a result, a lot of the stuff that's out there is more limited in scope, but also, kind of appropriate for the price point, that sort of thing. And part of what Joel was saying in this conversation he had with GameSpot. I always get that mixed up a little bit, and I've been Yeah,
It's okay.
I've
I suffer from bouts of dyslexia too. So
but yeah, in his conversation with them about this, part of what he was saying was Oculus kind of, by throwing money at some of these developers to make large budget AAA titles, that they in a way create kind of like a false expectation of what that developer is able to do in VR, and also what the marketplace can expect. And in a lot of ways that's bad, because then it leads to, like like I was saying, like it leads to people's expectations being too high, and then also it leads to these developers then not being able to recoup their investments if they try to make large scale titles in the future without that type of money coming in. So, and I mean, one of the examples that they gave, and I'm not sure that this would necessarily be a problem for them, but um, he mentioned the Oculus exclusive Robo Recall that was recently released by Epic Games, and that game, I mean, it's been quoted as having a budget close to the original Gears of War. So, I mean, we're talking, in the millions for sure, if not, the tens of millions, probably close to that mark, I would imagine.
and that was given away
Um,
for free.
yeah, exactly. So, and just the idea that, hey, it's cool that they make this one-off game, but then going forward, it's not like that studio is going to be able to, make titles of that same quality and expect to actually make money and recoup those costs from owners out there that are actually purchasing titles from customers. Really, the only way that a developer can make money back from such a huge investment like that is by getting funding from outside. Because I think I was listening to a different podcast recently, or reading something that was just going over, just the raw numbers of how many headsets are out there right now. I mean, if you think about it, if you're to take Tim Sweeney on his word, for example, I think he said something like he estimates that there's approximately 750,000 Vives out there, and about 250 or so thousand Oculus Rifts out there, and just under a million, so around 900,000 or so PlayStation VR headsets out there. So I mean, all things told, you're talking about a couple million headsets max that are able to support high end VR. And if your game's costing 10 million plus, even if you sold to every single one of those people, you're not going to really, I mean, the chances of you making your money back are slim to none when the entire uh, platform base is only a couple million. So I mean, so right now, I mean, really the best way to organically move forward, according to this article, is really, and according to HTC at this point, is to kind of more organically make titles that are appropriate for where uh, virtual reality is now. And I thought it was. I'd want to know kind of what your take was. The article kind of that I was reading, anyways, that talked about Joel Breton's discussion with GameSpot, and then kind of it pivoted over to then going from him criticizing Oculus for you know in some ways, artificially funding to lead to these, you know, uh, this kind of mismatch, as it were, to then talking about how Vive has their own, first party development now, at HTC, and how and how that would work. And I'm just curious. I mean, I'm not sure if HTC is taking a completely different approach to Oculus in terms of how they're approaching projects or what. I mean, I do know that I guess in a way the big thing that seemed different to me, and I'd like to see what you think of this too, is that it sounds like HTC with their Vive first party titles are going to be much more open and platform agnostic. And so maybe in a way Joel is thinking, Oculus is kind of doing a bad thing by not only, funding these huge titles, but then also making them exclusive. And by doing that's really the most harmful aspect of it, because you have developers that are developing these exclusive titles for Oculus on these huge budgets, and then aren't able to follow up with successful, secondary projects, and also aren't able to sell on all of the various VR platforms. That by doing that, it hurts the industry as a whole. I'm not sure, but I mean, yeah, and I mean, I in some ways, it seems like Vive would be doing the same thing as Oculus by having their first party titles that they're going to financially back, as opposed to allowing these projects to be, just completely, funded on the backs of customers. But at the same time, I guess the difference is maybe this, being more open. And if you are funding titles that are accessible on a wide range of VR platforms, and that's okay for the ecosystem. I'm not sure. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So, well, I mean, there's you covered quite a bit there. Let's take it back for a second to just his criticism of Oculus and the reasoning that he gave. It's I really don't know where to stand on exclusives. I know it's a hot topic, and I'm not trying to skirt whatever the debate is, but for me, like, if people are throwing money into VR, it's very hard for me to label it as a bad thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the thing is, like, I'm trying to keep as objective of a view as I can. I love HTC. I love the Vive, and I'm really happy with what they're doing with it. But when I step back and I try to look at this article and the comments made, just from a purely objective standpoint, it sounds. It doesn't sound like they're whining. It doesn't sound like HTC is whining about it. It just sounds like it's not factually based, or that the evidence is not as empirical as you'd like it to be. And in a sense, like, what you were saying when you referenced from the article earlier, that there is or that he wanted the games to match the current marketplace. That's almost like shooting for mediocrity. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess that's the best way that I can put it. Where it's just like, if you have a company like Facebook, and look, I'm say what you want about Facebook, say what you want about Oculus, but I'm just saying, if you have a company that is willing to throw a ton of money because they have the resources to create well-polished games well ahead of like where the market is. Yes, that's dangerous for the company to do, but as a consumer, I don't see anything wrong with that. It's hard for me to find something wrong with that, because it's just like, okay, you're trying to push this technology at a faster rate than what would normally and organically happen. And the thing is, like, most of the time when people are pushing the limit when it comes to technology, you have breakthroughs rather than setbacks. I mean, and that's not like, I mean, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, just to piggyback off of what you were saying. I mean, it's not like we're talking about titles that would exist otherwise, but for Oculus's funding. I mean, a lot of these games that we're talking about that are big budget, backed Oculus titles are titles that probably would have never existed if Oculus wasn't the one footing the bill. So like you were saying, I mean, customers only, the marketplace gains from those. I mean, if it's better to have, I wish all VR titles were accessible on all platforms, obviously. But if a game wasn't going to exist otherwise, I don't see why Oculus somehow allowing a game like that to happen and then causing it and then making it exclusive on their platform is a terrible thing. Because if it wasn't going to exist otherwise, at least it exists somewhere, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, that's definitely another angle to look at it, but kind of paints the same picture. It's tough for me to look at it, and say that it's a terribly bad thing. Like, okay, I have a Vive, I don't have an Oculus, so I can't partake in all of the cool content that's coming out on Oculus. But that's a decision that I made that I'm happy with, and I'm confident that in due time HTC will come out with its own content, and that the content will kind of fill itself from there. And so now pivoting to I think the second point that you had made, it is good though to see HTC kind of putting their money where their mouth is, where they are now releasing their first party titles and making them available for all platforms. Or I don't know if it's all platforms. I know that in the article it specifically mentioned that Arcade Saga would become available on PSVR. But it remains to be seen what will happen, or at least I haven't heard anything about it going to Oculus. But there's what I think another couple games coming down the pipeline, and something that I do want to mention, I want to get your thoughts on is a lot of what I'm reading now, just on when you take a bird's eye view or a high level look at what's really going on in these VR wars, or the war for the VR market space. It's not really a war of hardware; it's a war of software. And so Oculus is definitely coming in with their own angle, trying to put exclusive apps and exclusive experiences available on Oculus Home. But you have Valve, which services both sides. So Valve is going to, they're going to do great either way, because Rift owners will be able to buy games, or they'll be paying Valve for whatever. And then also you have HTC now working on Viveport, which is going to be the first subscription service that's going to be out there. And I just with the subscription-based models that have become so successful in almost every other industry, I got to believe that them being the first to market, it's not going to be perfect and pretty when it comes out, but them being the first ones available, I think you're going to have a lot of people flock to them. There's going to be a lot of content that comes out, and it's that early bird gets the worm type of situation, unless somebody else can come in right away. But they'll be able to create a wealth of content on their site, on their subscription service for under $10 a month. I think it's like $7 a month. Less than like a Netflix account or something. So, people will be able to try all these different games and experiences. And I think that's only going to help HTC grow. And they're responsible for the hardware. So, there's a lot of moving parts. It really depends on what angle you look at it with. Go ahead.
I mean, I was going to say, like, jumping off of that, I mean, we kind of talked about this last week a little bit, and it seems like this article is kind of, re-emphasizing and confirming some of our thoughts when we were talking about the LG headset. I mean, it does. I mean, if these early, comments about Vive's first party titles being accessible via PlayStation VR is any indication, if HTC takes an open platform approach and lets its software work on any headset that could potentially work with it, like LG's upcoming headset, like other, Steam VR at the very least headsets, potentially Oculus. We don't know about that one, but, that might be a little bit more of a stretch, but we'll see. Considering, Oculus does support, Steam VR to some extent. So it's possible. But, I mean, the fact that HTC is looking at this as a software war in a sense, and really wanting to support VR as a whole rather than just one. Obviously, by having a strong virtual reality ecosystem, that will ensure the likelihood of success for their VR hardware that much more. But it seems like their approach is, let's just support VR, period, and by helping out the ecosystem, we'll make money off of our software, and we'll also, help out our hardware. It seems like that's their approach. And they understand that, we need as many customers as we can get. We need as many people out there to support us. And so we're not going to shy away from taking advantage of people out there with PlayStation VRs or other future headsets. If they want to buy our software, that's a great thing for us because we'll make money off of it. And it's a great thing for VR in general, which over time will, help our hardware out as well. Like, it seems like that's the approach they're taking. And quite frankly, I mean, a lot of people were saying from the beginning that Oculus's approach was of having this kind of, walled off kind of garden of content that only works on their hardware, et cetera, was not a smart move. I mean, it's starting to look that way because, yeah, they're able to fund their own games, and a lot of these games are a lot of these big budget titles, for example, have been in development for a while. So kind of prior to all of the current, consumer level VR stuff kind of shaking out, and you know, it's great that they're funding it. Like I said, I support first party titles, and I support these companies going out and trying to pay for quality content that we wouldn't be able to get otherwise. But I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, yeah, I guess if Oculus is just paying for the game, then there's going to be developers out there willing to take the check and make the game, make the title, but how many that are actually able to take advantage of that? I mean, I guess in the long term, if you have enough of those titles, if you're paying enough for content, eventually people will come over just by sheer we need to get this hardware in order to play these titles. But I mean, right now, if those figures I mentioned earlier are true, I mean, the Vive has 3 times as many headsets out there as Oculus does, and that's even before we have any other manufacturers making Steam VR tracking. Lighthouse based tracking headsets, and then you have almost a million. You're talking 1.75 million versus 250,000 Oculus units. 1.75 being all of the other potential high-end VR headsets out there right now versus their 250,000. I mean, to some extent, I can see Joel Breton's point from HTC when he says that making Oculus making a title only for them is hurting the rest of the industry, because ultimately right now only a small percentage of the virtual reality customer base is able to actually play some of the best stuff. And if Oculus was to focus less on its hardware, obviously make good hardware as well. People love the Rift. It's done a great job. But I mean, if they were to focus on the software side as being able to take advantage of everyone out there, because in 10 years from now, do we really think Oculus is going to be the only manufacturer of virtual reality technology? I highly doubt it. So if long term you're going to have virtual reality headsets and hardware and everything from from various companies instead of just one, you would think that the earlier you get your software working with everyone's platforms, the better. At least that's what I would think. So, and maybe, I mean, I'm sure they pay a lot of smart people over there at Oculus to make good decisions. So I'm sure they have kind of their long-term outlook on where they see all of this stuff going. And I'm sure they have a reason to do this the way they're doing it. It's just, yeah, it's looking at it right now, it seems like they're over limiting themselves, and they're potentially, in a couple of years from now, they may become far less relevant that they would be otherwise as just like a first party VR studio, for example, or something else. But I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can see that point of view. It's hard for me to see them becoming irrelevant at any point.
Yeah, I mean, they have tons of money, tons of backing. They have tons of expertise. I mean, realistically, a lot of the engineers over at Oculus and the people working on, I mean, they're some of the most passionate people about virtual reality on the planet. Like a lot of the people over there.
Facebook is just too ingrained and entrenched into a lot of things that it's not going to become irrelevant.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, it just makes me wonder though, like why they're so focused on tying their software to their hardware. I mean, can you imagine if Facebook had had tried to release some kind of a device that you had to buy in order to use Facebook?
I mean, there were rumors about a Facebook smartphone a while back, if you remember.
Sure, but at the end of the day, you can still use Facebook on all devices. Like,
true,
I'm just saying, like, it's just weird to me that they would really, that they're so concerned about linking the hardware and the software together, and maybe long term they were thinking of of moving away from that. And short term, they're keeping that way because the technology just wasn't there, and somewhere along the line,
well,
Valve and who knows.
The parallel or analogy that people always give is, Facebook's approach is similar to Apple's approach in terms of how they integrate their software and hardware. But even Apple, when iTunes first came out and revolutionized the music industry by offering single song downloads, that wasn't only available on Macs. I mean, they also made that available for PCs so that people could go out and buy an iPod, which is in a completely different industry in terms of like its electronic type. But they'd be able to come back, use whatever type of the computer they had, whether it's Mac or Windows, and be able to use their iPod with it. They wouldn't have to buy a separate, laptop that matches with the hardware wouldn't have to all line up. So at some point, I do agree with you that there's got to be some give and take on there, and they're going to have to make some type of adjustment. And going back to Viveport, like you had mentioned earlier, I would be shocked. I would be genuinely shocked if it wasn't open to all platforms, because you talked about the numbers, and in terms of 1.75 to 2 million units out there in terms of just high-end headsets. The thing is, HTC, they want to get their cut. They want to get their cut, especially when it comes to the software side of things, because right now they don't get anything. Rift owners can buy games through Oculus Home, or they can buy games through Steam, but that money either goes right back into Oculus or it goes to Valve. Now you open up the subscription to all platforms, and you include, PlayStation. I'm not sure about PlayStation VR if that's going to be compatible, but
it would take more work.
It would take more work, but at least for Oculus owners. And the thing is, then for HTC, I feel like it's a no-brainer, because one, it goes along with what they've been saying about keeping an open ecosystem, and number two, there's 250,000 potential buyers in there, potential subscribers, and growing, that they would normally never get any money from, because that money would either go back to Oculus or to Valve. So it just makes sense to me that they would find a way to integrate that, because even if you get just a small percentage of Oculus Home users, not Oculus Home, but just Oculus Rift users, that's a good amount of revenue. And the thing is, if you're the only service offering that, Steam doesn't have a subscription model, and I'm not sure about Oculus Home, but if HTC can really capitalize on getting those high-end experiences and offering them on the subscription model, that's a no-brainer for me. I would be genuinely shocked if it wasn't on all platforms.
No, I agree, and it seems like they're taking that approach. If you take this Joel Breton at his word, and a lot of what they've been talking about, and it seems like that's going to be the way to do things. I just wonder at what point is it going to make sense for Oculus to do the same? I mean, one could argue that even right now it makes sense for them to do. I just think I know Revive exists and people can purchase Oculus titles and get them to work on their Vive, but not natively supported. There's no consistency or really, security in doing and using that method to play games from the Oculus store on, using your Vive. I mean, imagine if Oculus added in support for the Vive and slowly started making titles officially compatible. How many people that have, Vives would be buying these AAA titles and other great content that Oculus is putting out, and giving Oculus money that way? I mean, it'll be interesting to see where things go. But it's just fascinating the way, all of these different approaches are really fascinating. And so far it seems like HTC, Valve, the Vive, all of these more open platforms are really beating out, these closed off platforms like Oculus right now.
Well, the not so secret reality of the situation is that Oculus probably loves Revive. I mean, if you think about it, they're getting a customer base there that they wouldn't normally reach, because they get to tout the fact that they have exclusives, that they are purely catering to their market, which makes Oculus fans and Oculus owners very happy because they feel like they're part of, the special club there. But at the same time, they want apps like Revive to succeed because now you're getting money from Vive owners that you wouldn't normally get. So it's a cold war on many fronts. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of stuff happening where, I mean, we would think that Revive benefits us, but Oculus probably loves that too.
Yeah. No, that's an interesting point, and I mean they would be stupid to not feel that way if all they're doing is getting money from these.
For anybody like worried about the fact that Oculus might shut down Revive, I mean there's no incentive for them to do so unless there's some kind of information being leaked or something being hacked in there. But there's just no reason for them to shut it down.
Yep.
Cool, man. Well, we'll just have to follow this story as it goes along.
It seems like every week or two, there's news stories coming out that just kind of pushes us a little bit further into understanding how some of these companies are working and what their main motivations are. And I mean, props to HTC for again doubling down on this stuff. Like, I mean, whether we agree or disagree on the extent to which Oculus might be hurting the VR, platform, whatever. I mean, HTC has done a great job of supporting open VR and VR in general as well. So, it's great to hear that they are approaching this from an open point of view, and I am excited to see kind of how all of these statements are going to play out once these first party titles start coming out, once there's more headsets on the market, really how this is all going to, work to their advantage or not. So.
Absolutely. Well, and this is going to be a long play. So, we won't have answers by next week or probably even next year. We'll just have to see kind of how the market shakes out.
Yep.
Cool, Matt. Well, let's jump into game talk. And before we do, I just want to give a quick shout out to Eric Westcott. So before we jump into this, Ronnie, I actually should have mentioned this before we started recording, but
of course.
Eric reached out and wanted to let us know that, we talked about Quiver last week. And so he just wanted to give a couple more thoughts.
Okay.
And so I don't know if you've had a chance to play it again since that time, but a couple of the ones that stood out that I just wanted to share with the audience so that, we can give a better look or at least a more comprehensive look at the game Quiver, which is that archery game. So he said you guys made a point about how there's only a single level, but there are actually at least two other levels with pretty different looks. However, the way this game is being developed is that huge portions are scraped and replaced as the developer finally tunes this stuff in Unity as he learns and goes along. So the way that it's being described is that it's less of a game and more of a live experiment that people can kind of follow along, which actually is fascinating for me. I haven't had a chance to jump in, but now I'd love to be able to see this kind of developed. And so
no, that's really cool. And I kind of wish that there was something more in my face. I mean, it's possible that I missed something when I was like booting it up or going through the tutorial or whatnot. Because I did, I think at some point just stop the tutorial and go right into the game. I mean, if that's how this stuff is going to work, like it'd be cool to kind of see that more come to the surface for people playing the game for the first time, so that they know to come back. And because now that I know that's super, super, super interesting, and I'm going to make sure to kind of check in on it every week or so, just to check for updates like that, because that does sound really awesome. I had no idea as someone that was just coming to the game, for a few days or so, and there weren't any major changes. There was no way, like I had no idea. So that's kind of, I think that sounds really interesting. And that gives people a reason to come back to the game.
No, 100%. On the just a quick point on that, Eric also mentioned that it's Quiver is the king of updates. He says there's almost 175 as of today since it came out in December. So
Wow.
so yeah, I mean there's obviously stuff being added in all the time. So the game
Yeah.
that you play, last week or whenever you played it, probably is looking already a little bit different if that schedule's the
Okay.
same.
No, that's very cool. And I'd be curious. I mean, maybe I need to do a little bit more research as far as what all the updates do. Like my kind of quick my I guess my assumption was that there were so many updates because a lot of the updates are kind of, adding items or that kind of thing, because I do know that you can kind of upgrade your character and all that kind of stuff. But like, yeah, I mean, that's props to the developers that are working on the title to really, give the community all of that type of support. And that makes me really excited to go back to the game.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Eric. I mean, this is great. For us, like we just try to jump into new games every week so that we can give our thoughts and impressions. And something like this, when you haven't been with a game for a while, and I don't know, maybe Ronnie, that's something we can do is like getting a game, ahead of
No,
time,
yeah, well,
and maybe
and you and
talking about it
I,
a couple weeks down the road.
yeah, no, and we've been talking about that just in general of how do you, especially with covering VR titles and how many are coming out on a weekly basis now, just as far as keeping up with updates, because a lot of these games are early access and there aren't any fixed schedules in terms of when developers are, updating things or not. So sometimes it's a little bit hard. I mean, just for even for our viewers out there, I'm sure there are a lot of Vive owners that have quite a few titles up to this point, and just kind of keeping up with what additions are being made to games and what the updates are they substantial, are they not, all that kind of stuff. I mean, we'll have to continue to think of ways to keep track of a lot of these early access titles to make sure that we're covering stuff when it's relevant to cover updates. So
Yeah, for
we'll,
sure. Well,
we'll
yeah, I know we talked about that last week, but let's you and I, once we're done here. I know we're just kind of brainstorming live
yeah,
on the
yeah.
podcast, but we can go ahead and I would say maybe just pick some games and do a whole episode on specifically games that we've covered in the past or that have been out for a while, but the updates have been completely different, in the last couple of months. So let's go ahead and actually plan that out, because I mean,
Yeah.
something like this is awesome. So thank you so much, Eric. We do appreciate that and are glad that we're able to kind of share that perspective, that we missed last week.
Yep. No, that sounds good. And yeah, I mean, yeah, something like, just to cover the games that have had substantial updates. Because some games, I mean, obviously just tweaking, an AI routine here or there, probably not something that is worth mentioning. But like some titles, like we were talking about a little bit last week, I mean, literally are night and day different experiences after updates than they were originally. So those are definitely titles to watch out for. So
Very cool, man. Okay, well, so let's jump into our game talk for this week. I think you said you wanted to go first.
yeah, so I just had a quick, like, this is more of a plug for me probably at this point than anything. Um, I decided I was, kind of checking out Steam, and I noticed that Dread Halls had came out for the Vive. It was a kind of a maze horror type game that I had played on the original Oculus Dev Kit a few years ago, and I said, "Huh, that's." I thought that was interesting that was, finally like coming to Steam with Vive support and whatnot. But it didn't really. I mean, I I never had the nostalgia for that game quite like some of the other titles that I had played on on my initial Oculus Dev Kit. But that kind of reminded me to go back and check out a game that is released in Steam for the Vive. That I mean, I would say that it was probably my first just you know, mind blowing, jaw dropping VR experience ever, and that was Titans of Space. That game, I just remember the first time I booted that up and felt like I was in space and was able to look at different planets, and the sun was behind me. I felt like I was in a real like that was one of the first times that I really had a moment of of getting true immersion and a sense of presence in virtual reality. And I'll never forget it. And so I kind of felt like I owed it to the developers to purchase, Titans of Space 2.0 in the Steam store. I think it was $8. I purchased it and tried it out on the Vive, and it's just as good, if not better, for the Vive as I remembered it for the original dev kit. So for the Oculus. So not to this isn't like this isn't gonna it's basically a 30-minute experience more or less. So there isn't a ton of replayability or anything like that, but it is really cool to show people. And I think just in general, the thing that I loved about it the most is just the presentation in it is amazing, and you actually feel like you're learning about space and about our solar system throughout the 30, like the 25-minute or so tour of our solar system that you go through. So just literally you load it up and you're in a little like kind of spaceship thing, and it takes you from planet to planet in our solar system, and it tells you that everything is down to, I think, 1/1,000th scale. So you see the sun behind you, and then you go from each planet to planet, and all of the different moons and asteroids and dwarf planet, just everything that you can think of that's a major body in our solar system. And as the all of the planets are wonderfully detailed. They actually look much better than they looked in the Oculus dev kit, and both because the headset obviously is better, but also just because I think they've improved on the textures and whatnot since the original releases. But you go from planet to planet, and down on your spaceship monitor, it has information about each planet, so you can see how large they are and how they compare to other planets, and you can read more information, and they give you kind of interesting facts about each planet. And so it's really kind of a cool educational resource on that front. And then what makes it special, because it's in VR, is that they start showing you scales. So near the end, you'll see, I don't want to give too much away, but basically they bring in different bodies, different stars from other solar systems and the rest of the galaxy, just to show you that as big as our sun is, there are things out there that make everything in our solar system feel tiny in comparison. And seeing that in VR and seeing the scale of it is really, I think, something that you can't really do any other way. There's just no way that you could really get that sense of scale, on a chalkboard or something. You really have to see it for yourself. So, the music's great. This whole time, there's kind of an epic orchestral background as you go from planet to planet. And like I said, it was a game that I felt needed to be plugged at some point, and quite frankly, a game that I needed to purchase at some point for my Vive, because it just had such a strong impact on me and my initial impressions in virtual reality. So, if the developer ever happens to listen to this or anything like that, just props to you. And in a lot of ways, your strong first impression on Titans of Space, the original version for the Oculus dev kit, is part of what made me, stick with all of this stuff and be where I am now. So that's that's why I wanted to plug the title, and why I think anybody that likes space or is interested in more educational programs for the Vive, you might want to check this out.
Cool, man. Well, I love space, so I will be checking it out. I wish you'd mentioned it earlier now.
Yep. No, like I said, it's been kind of in the background of my, I've been thinking of picking it up, but I had played it before on the original, so it was kind of one of those things. Well, I wonder if they made a lot of changes, and it's still fairly similar to what it was like before, but they've definitely added quite a bit to it, and you can just tell that. It has you can either do a sit down or stand up experience. It doesn't really like you're not going to be walking around in it per se because it's a guided tour. But it supports the motion controllers for the Vive. It does a great job of that.
Is there any like interactivity with it, or is it more so just
There
I
are.
guess
I didn't. I
expositional?
didn't. Yeah. So I didn't get into that portion of the game too much yet. It does seem like they added a couple of things to kind of launch. Like there's a mode separate from the tour mode that kind of let you kind of launch yourself out into space, and it seems like you'd be able to manipulate objects that way. And you can, like, as you're looking at each planet, you can kind of grab them and kind of look at them more close up and all of the UI and interfacing is through your little spaceship pod thing. So there's like a little display in front of you, and then you have buttons on the sides of the display that you point at with your motion controller, and then you can click on or hold down to go move from like menu to menu. So you can kind of interact with those to get more information about each planet, and then kind of go through the tour. And they have a shortened tour. I think that's around 15 minutes long, which, if I were to guess, probably cuts out some of the extra, space. Some of the extra stuff, like some of the moons and stuff like that are focused on. Because I mean, this is pretty extensive. Like I said, I mean, literally, you will be seeing every moon, or a lot of the moons anyway, all of the major moons on each of the planets in our solar system. And there are a lot more space bodies. I don't know what you would call them, but there are a lot more things in our solar system to see than one would initially think. And for someone like me that has kind of limited knowledge of our own solar system, it's awesome to get this firsthand experience and learn a lot. Learn about things that I didn't know otherwise. So.
Very cool, man. Well, this sounds like it was similar to my longbow experience in terms of what just opened my eyes to the capabilities of VR and got me hooked right away. It sounds like you had your moment with this one.
Yep.
Cool, man. Well, yeah, so that one's available on Steam, I think, for $7.99. That's US dollars. And you got Ronnie's personal recommendation. So if you love space, make sure to check that one out. My game for this week is it seems like it's the new Reddit darling in terms of first-person shooters. I tried out Pavlov VR, and it's really good. I actually had a lot of fun jumping into it. So I've played Onward. Like I said before, I'm not very good at Onward, but I do enjoy playing it. Unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, my comparisons are going to be very much related to my experiences with Onward. And I will say this: I feel as though the game is much easier to pick up. The learning curve is not as high or not as steep as a game like Onward. It's also not as in depth, but to me, that represents not necessarily a complete benefit, but definitely a benefit in or advantage in certain ways. And so the thing is, like, I just jumped into the game, was able to jump into a match, and I wasn't great right away, but I was discovering as I went along, and I didn't die in the first 30 seconds of each match or each round. Which to me was an accomplishment because I usually don't make it as far in Onward because for some reason I'm just not on the same level as a lot of people who've been playing that on a more consistent basis. But for this, I felt like I was much more competitive. Obviously it's very team based, and I really liked the movement, which is something that I struggled with a little bit in Onward, and they're both locomotion based. But for some reason, the movement in Pavlov just felt much cleaner. I felt like I was able to get a much better sense of my surroundings, being able to move relative to them. So kind of being able to like strafe around corners, or just being able to back up properly while firing in the direction that I'm going away from, and looking in the direction that I'm going away from. And so it's little things like that that and again, maybe I haven't jumped into Onward for a couple weeks, so it could have improved. But if I'm just making a direct comparison, I do like the locomotion or the movement much better in Pavlov. Sorry,
Let
go
me
ahead.
just ask it. Oh no, just on that point. Are you limited in any way in terms of what you're able to do in Pavlov versus Onward? Because I know part of what makes Onward so challenging is just how much control you have over the type of movement, and I mean it's not always intuitive, but it does give you like a lot of options. Like do you have as many options? Or?
You don't, and I think that, like I said, in a way, I'm sure some people will look at that and say like, oh, this game is too simple for me. But in other aspects, I would argue that in the long run, simplicity sometimes wins out when you're trying to reach a broader audience. And so the game is being compared to Counter-Strike a lot, which I played a little bit back in the day, but I can definitely see the comparisons. And so, there's not complicated loadouts. You kind of just start off and you can buy your weapons at the beginning of each round. Your money kind of fluctuates with how well you're doing. And so, I guess also what may have made this game a little bit easier for me to grasp in terms of the reloading for the guns and like the gun mechanics overall was the fact that I had played games like Onward, that I had played games like Containment Initiative, where the reloading mechanics are super tough, or at least they require somewhat of a learning curve. So I jump into a game like this, and after having experience with those other games, it's easy for me to pick up because the movements are almost second nature. Yeah, I might be pressing a different button for something specifically, but on the whole, you get used to it pretty quickly, whether it's the trigger button or the grip button or something like that. You're familiar with how this stuff works. So you empty out the clip, you reload with a new magazine, you cock it back, and you're back in action type of thing. And so it's a lot of fun too. And I don't want to overuse that game that adjective when it comes to games, but I had a blast with it, and maybe it was just the group that I was playing with during my first time specifically, but like I was literally laughing because of all like the shenanigans that was happening, and like there's our team was actually doing pretty well this one round, and like someone like threw a random grenade and like it didn't land where it was supposed to and came right back at us, and it was almost like a scene out of like a comedy or a cartoon where like it comes back and we all start yelling and running, and it's just like silly little moments like that I'm like I'm having a great time in like a military tactical shooter, which that's, of course, it's not a rule that you can't have a good time or can't have fun, but like I've again, and I'm not trying to bash Onward because I really do like the game, but there's just, like I said, there's a reason that this that Pavlov has gotten a certain, not cult following, but a certain like it's built up a certain fan base. And so as of now, obviously it's in early access, so there's not as much content. And I know Damon has been in touch with the developer, just trying to get more information on the game as well. And so there's definitely a lot of stuff coming out, and I'm excited to see what happens, because I think there's one map right now. There's only one map, but there still seems like there's a good amount of players on there. And I think the map changes in terms of the objectives every single round. So it's it doesn't get too stale. I'm sure maybe if for the people who've been playing it for a while, it has, but it's exciting to see that there's going to be other stuff added. Obviously, and the content will continue to come through. As long as the developer stays active, which it seems like he's very much involved with the community for it. So.
Very cool. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. That sounds like a lot of fun.
And it's I just throw the price out there real quick. It's $9.99. So to me, that's not a bank breaker, compared to some of the other games that are out there. And
does it seem like there's a lot of? I mean, I know people are talking about it a lot. I mean, it's really quick to get into a match and all of that.
Yeah, so it took me a little while to figure that out, but you get into matches through the menu. I was going around like the lobby area where you first get in, and it took me a while to figure out, because I kind of just got lost and didn't see any other way, and then found that you can actually join matches through the menu. So for anyone who's going to try the game, hopefully saving you maybe a minute or two there of looking around, trying to figure out how to exactly jump into matches. But yeah, I mean, it's I don't want to oversell it. I don't want to undersell it. I think it's a fantastic game. It's early access, so for $10, I just want you to be aware of exactly what you're buying. But when it comes to early access, like we always say, you're buying potential. It's I guess it's maybe like buying a stock, right? But you kind of have a little bit more visibility into how much the developer is involved with the game, the type of updates that they're planning, whatever it is, and whatever types of information that they share. And it seems like this one has a lot of potential. It seems like a lot of people have jumped onto the bandwagon pretty early on, and so yeah, I mean, I'm right there with them. It's a lot of fun for me to jump in. I love the mechanics. I love the feel of it. The movement is great. And the community is what's great about the community overall, and I know we say this about a lot of games, but the fact is that it still remains to be true with the growing number of Vive owners out there. Is you jump into a game and it's my first time with a game, so I'm asking questions and I don't get crap from anybody about it. In fact, everybody's like super helpful. I was just like, I was like, how do I do this? And they're like, oh, you just do that. And I was like, yeah, this is actually my first time. And so then, people actually stopped and were like, oh, here, follow me. I'm going to show you how to like defuse the bomb, do all that stuff. And so, like, it's just, it's those like little experiences here and there that really make, that I guess add to the game experience overall. Like you come away with such a positive feeling from it, being like, man, I had a good time, met some pretty cool people, had a fun experience with it. And so, yeah, I mean, if you're on the fence about getting the game, I just got it earlier this week, and I'll probably be back in it quite a bit more as I try to level up and just, I guess, become better at the game overall. But definitely worthwhile, or at least worth checking out if you're into first-person shooters. And so, yeah, man.
Awesome. Well, that sounds great. Sounds like you've been having a lot of fun. So, yeah, you got Zane's recommendation out there, and hopefully you guys won't beat on him too bad when he goes back in and plays later this week.
Yeah. Well, it's okay. Bring it on. You only get better by facing the best or playing against the best. So I don't mind it as long as I can get a couple shots here and there, and which like I said, I was able to do in my first time playing it, which surprised me. So yeah, it's a fun game. I hope to see you guys in there if you do join. And yeah, username is everything Vive, so you know where to find me.
Very cool.
But yeah, so let's go ahead and wrap this one up. I don't have anything else. I don't know about you.
Yeah, no, that's all I have for this week. So
yeah, the only other I'll just mention, I saw there's a lot of chatter about that Paranormal Activity game out now.
Yeah, I was thinking about picking it up. My only reservation right now was that I heard it's still a little bit like I heard the control in the game is a little bit wonky right now.
The movement, I think, is based on where you're looking, and a lot of people don't like that. But I did see some posts from the developer saying that they're going to work on work on updating that and just providing more options. But I don't know, man. I'm not good with jump scare games like that. So
no, I know.
if you get it, let me know.
I was flirting with the idea of picking that up this week, and I haven't yet, but I probably will at some point. So we'll see.
I feel like at some point I'm gonna grab it just because I want to put someone else in there and watch them play it.
Watch them squirm and scream.
Watch them go through the. I mean, hey, there's some people who they love the torture. They love being able to put themselves in those types of positions. So you know what? I'll help them out by doing it virtually for them.
Yeah, people that like scary movies, I feel like virtual reality is just when it's done well. Horror is amazing in virtual reality.
Oh yeah, I mean it's so many good horror games out there. I was just reading about Chair in a Room, Greenwater, and how like that was people were talking about how that was like one of the first games that really gave them a sense of presence in terms of just that horror type of element.
Now that I've been more more engulfed in virtual reality. Like I picked up that game, I think right when it came out, and I was still relatively. I wasn't as seasoned in VR as I am now. Like as far as the Vive mechanics go and all of that. I mean, I was used to it, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I wonder about going back to it now. how it would be, because there were a few moments in that game where I kind of got stuck, where I didn't know, how to get the game to move on from where I was. And I'm just wondering if some of that stuff will be a little. I should check out that game again.
Okay, so let's add that to the list. Okay, so one of the next episodes that we'll do. Actually, so here's a good action piece for us to leave the episode on. One of the next episodes that we will do will be this going back and playing through games that have significant updates. So if there is one that you guys would like to recommend, I mean, we're going to come up with a list and maybe come out with it later this week or next week. But if you have games that have had significant updates, like Quiver or other games out there, definitely let us know so that we can kind of keep that on the radar as we go through and start playing these and put together that episode for you guys.
Yep. No, any help you guys can provide us is always greatly appreciated. We're just two people. We can only do so much. So all the help we get from all our fantastic listeners is always appreciated. So.
Absolutely. And so with that, let's go ahead and close out. Just want to give a little reminder that we are on iTunes, Stitcher, and all your favorite podcasting apps. If you can go ahead and leave us a review, especially on iTunes, if you guys are listening through the podcast or the iTunes app, we would appreciate it. Obviously, we're trying to grow the podcast out. It'll help us get more developers, and we do have developers coming down the pipeline, so we will have those for you guys again very soon. But it just helps the podcast grow, helps us get newer insights, and hopefully some cooler guests on the show as well. So if you could leave a review, we'd appreciate it. And just another reminder that the Steam Key giveaway for the Smashbox Arena Steam Key will be on YouTube. So make sure you go there, episode number 61. Leave us a comment. You can let us know about what we were just talking about in terms of games with cool updates, or just leave us a comment and let us know what you thought about the news or the games that we covered, and we will go from there. But Ronnie, you have a fantastic rest of your week, man.
Same to you. Take care.
All right, guys. Well, take care. We'll talk again very, very soon.